Hello, everyone. My name is Suraya Keating, and I'm an MFT. And more important to that, at least in terms of my identity, is I'm also a registered drama therapist and a registered expressive arts therapist. And I currently work at a few different locations, but for the purpose of this interview, I work about half-time for Marin Shakespeare Company as their Shakespeare for Social Justice director. I also have a private practice, and I do work in hospitals, schools, and other settings as well. I first began doing drama therapy work in jail and prison in 2003. So it's been about 16 years, I guess. Wow. I began working for a unique program in a jail called Theater for Change, where we used theater and other arts as well to help incarcerated people look at, particularly men or people who identify as men, look at their ways they've been conditioned to be violent, and to kind of unlearn and deconstruct that through drama therapy and also expressive arts therapy. And since beginning there, I've been working pretty widely at San Quentin State Prison, where we use Shakespeare as a tool for inner growth and community building, and also life story theater. So we after we're done with a Shakespeare play, we use themes from that play to invite our participants to reflect on their own life experiences related to those themes and create a theater piece that is meaningful and important to them around those themes. So ever since I was a little girl, I had a kind of fascination with prisons, but not just a fascination. It was more of like a deep knowing that it was really a ridiculous idea to lock people up and punish them. It just didn't make any sense to me. And I remember contemplating this as a as a pretty young person, growing up in the New York City area. And yeah, and it just seemed to me that people in prison were coming from backgrounds where they were already being oppressed, pushed down, and I really wanted to get to know what was going on with people on the inside. Like, who were they? What was their life story? And who were they as people? You know, my journey in some ways began as a little girl. Then years later, I worked for a long time with youth, both as an artist in residence and also as a drama therapist, expressive arts therapist. I worked with a lot of inner city youth, at-risk youth, and saw and felt very touched by what felt like this trajectory of so many youth in the inner city heading towards lives of drugs, crime, incarceration. So yeah, so back in 2003, when the opportunity came to work in a jail, I jumped on it. Probably my weakness is a tendency to, well, I like to assume the best of everyone. And what happens with that sometimes is I'll perhaps be too kind or too accommodating for someone who needs a stronger boundary. So yeah, so I've watched that in myself, and through the years, yeah, just tried to work with that in a different way. So yeah, one of my strengths that has helped me in prison work and also across many different populations is the ability to work in the moment spontaneously and really feel the energy of the room and respond and facilitate from that place of what's alive here, and shed my plan, and that willingness to let go of my plan through the years has been a real gift and a real aid. just one person at a time to create more bridges of love and kindness and compassion. I'm oriented towards living my life in a way that, like, each interaction is a sacred interaction, and each person I speak to, or listen to, both, there's an opportunity there. So I really feel like those little interactions are sacred and are key for creating that larger change. So how I meet every person that is in one of the groups I facilitate, and not just the groups, but even just passing people, like, I'm very intentional about being kind, getting to know people's names, treating people like I want to be treated. Like, I feel like that everyday ordinary stuff makes a huge difference. So yeah, I hope to create bridges. And then I ultimately hope to be a part of changing this very dysfunctional system. Success story. For sure, it's, just seeing the joy and celebration and the love for each other that the participants have. Not all the time, just to be realistic, but overall, that to me is a success. When I have this sense of we've created a community here, and it's not perfect, but we have created this loving tribe. So one example of a person, I'm thinking of someone I'll call Jay, who has been in Shakespeare in the San Quentin program for probably 12 years, one of the person I know the longest. And Jay is from another country, and is very shy at first about doing Shakespeare, still is shy, and has been sort of challenged in finding his way of fitting into the group, has a lot of trauma in his background. But through the years, I've seen Jay really come out of his shell, and also I think he does an amazing job of speaking his inner experience in a way that really touches others, like really speaking the transformation he's been through Shakespeare, and then through also other inner work that he's done at the prison. The evolution of the Marin Shakespeare prison program. And we began at San Quentin, I think it was 2003, when Leslie Currier, the amazing director of Marin Shakespeare Company, along with her husband, Bob Currier, they began the San Quentin Shakespeare program. And at that time, a man named Jonathan Gonzalez, thank you, Jonathan, was teaching there until he left to go to graduate school. And so I was hired to teach in 2005 and be the facilitator. And at that time, there may have been 6 or 7 individuals in Shakespeare. It was a very small group. It was not really recognized by anybody in San Quentin. People didn't really know what Shakespeare was or what we were doing. But I think it was maybe 2007 or 2008, maybe it was 2007, we put on our first full-length production of a Shakespeare play, Much Ado About Nothing. Me being a drama therapist and having a passion for, life story theater, self-revelatory style theater performances, I really wanted to try to incorporate that kind of work at San Quentin. So in the next few years, I proposed that we try that, what came to be known as the parallel play program. And so it's evolved, but through the years at San Quentin, we've developed a structure so that half the year we're working on a Shakespeare play, or 7 months we're working on a Shakespeare play. The other 5 or so months we're working on life story theater inspired by themes from the Shakespeare play, where those who want to can write a performance piece It might be a mini play, it might be a solo performance, it might be a song, spoken word. So that's been our structure at San Quentin. Now, at the same time, in the last 5 or 6 years, Marin Shakespeare began to slowly expand. Well, at San Quentin, we had already expanded from 1 class to 2 classes to now we have 4 classes a week. And then we expanded to Solano State Prison. And after a few years at those 2 prisons, we are now in 13 California prisons. We have a whole group of facilitators, including some wonderful drama therapists. I think ways I'd love to see, what would be even more ideal would be to give people who are incarcerated even more of an opportunity to engage in life story theater kind of work. It's not for everybody. Sometimes the distance of Shakespeare is what's needed, or the distance of, I'd love to see other playwrights in addition to Shakespeare being used in prisons. And I'm probably is happening, not with Marin Shakespeare Company currently, but I think that would be ideal. I guess, what comes to mind most though is, I'd like to find out from people who are incarcerated, to have a kind of focus group of what are their needs, in particular, people who've had a taste of our programs, what would be a next step for them. I'd be curious to have more involvement in the co-creation of the future with people who are incarcerated, and hear what their needs are. I feel like for me, what feels like it's already happening is there's a growing, I'll call it a tribe of people doing this work that I would love to see. There's already a Shakespeare in Prisons conference. Maybe that could be expanded to have a theater, not just in prison, but I would like to see more full, like, wraparound services, with services for people who are incarcerated, services for victims of crime and their families, services for families of people who are incarcerated, children. I mean, it's all happening, but if I was to dream big, I would see more of a full spectrum service. And also, actually, for the people working in the criminal justice system, I would love to bring drama therapy to the COs, the correctional officers, and create more bridges there, and other staff. I see this work influencing policy both for in prison and for people getting out of prison in a couple different ways. One way I feel like we are able to influence policy is by changing minds, or just inviting people to look at those who are incarcerated in a different light than they might otherwise look at them, just based on the news, which, our news is pretty toxic. Our mainstream news, I think, I hardly ever watch it. It doesn't really tell the story. And to me, theater much more accurately tells the story, and gives the staff at the prison, audience who comes to see our shows, people who see our shows online. We're so lucky to have so many videos of our shows in different prisons. I have had so many people write emails to me after seeing a show about how it changed their perception of people who are incarcerated. I mean, that is just like the one email I have repeatedly received, slightly different content. Little by little, we open our hearts, change our minds, change policies. I think drama therapists have this unique training in that we we, to me, are bringing in this, like this sacred fool role, goes by different names in different cultures, but we're bringing in this capacity to go into the dark and the light and work in this playful way to really dive deep into our psyches and what needs to be healed. And um, I think that ability, the the play, um, and the depth is really needed in our prisons, which are such heavy, depressing places, that the gift of lightness and play is very much needed, but not like the fluffy lightness that um, is like lightness with awareness, play with awareness. I think we have that ability to really transform with our skills in that way.